Okay, well, good evening, everyone, and welcome. If you would join me in a prayer to begin the evening. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, let me be just what they need. If they need someone to trust, let me be trustworthy. If they need sympathy, let me sympathize. If they need love, and they do need love, let me love in full measure.
Let me not anger easily, Lord. Let me be just.
Permit my justice to be tempered in your mercy.
Help me to counsel the anxious, crack the covering of the shy, temper the rambunctious with a gentle attitude. Let the lessons they learn make their lives fruitful and happy. And, Lord, let me bring them to you. Teach them through me to love you. Finally, permit me to learn the lessons they teach. Amen. In the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Good evening and welcome to our exciting event. My name is Mary Dunning and I'm the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services. I'm sorry I can't join you in person, but I did want to welcome all of our parents. A special thank you to CSPA, our parent organization, and in particular Kathy Philippot and her team for helping us with the evening. You will meet in a few minutes Helen, and Helen Jerome Lapointe is the chairperson of SEAC. SEAC is the Special Education Advisory Committee, and it was Helen and our SEAC team's idea to bring this night together for you. You will also be meeting in a few minutes my fantastic team, some of the leadership team from our department, and their plan, along with Helen, is to explain what SEAC does and also what our department does to support all of our students with special education needs. So again, welcome, and thank you very much for coming. Enjoy the evening.
Okay, so welcome again. As Mary said, my name is Helen Lapointe Jerome, and I'm chair of the Special Education Advisory Committee, or for short, SEAC. So welcome to all of you here and those of you at home. I was very pleased that SEAC and the department, with the support of CSPA and PIC, were able to bring you this information evening. I would like to point out a few people who are in the room tonight. First with us tonight is Associate Director Tom D'Amico. Tom, there he is. Welcome. And we also have with us Superintendent Brenda Wilson. She's at the back over there. Thank you. And a welcome to trustees. We have Trustee Moore. There she is. Thank you for coming. And I'm not sure about Trustee Mullen. He's supposed to be perhaps on his way. Okay, now Mary also thanked the people for organizing this evening, but I'd like to do my own thank yous as well. So to Mary and her department for preparing the bulk of this presentation, to Kathy Philpott for all the heavy lifting. She's the chair of the Catholic Schools Parent Association. Marty DeKemp and the communication department. Betty Popes, who is Mary's executive assistant, Sean Jackson, the chair of the Parent Involvement Committee, or PIC, Gabe Messicut from Learning Technologies. He is in charge of the webinar this evening, and Dave Bergevin for videotaping the presentation. So thank you. So this evening we will be covering a wide array of topics, trying to keep in mind what is most important for you, the parents. Hopefully this information is going to help you navigate the special education waters a bit more easily, or at least know what questions to look for or to ask for and where to look for those answers. As we're going to be covering a lot of ground in about an hour and a half, we will be taking questions for the last half hour or so, and only at the end of the presentation. Before I forget, I just want to point out that there are some washrooms down the hall here to your left if they're required. Okay, so getting back to questions. To make things run more smoothly, we've provided you with slips of paper on which to write your questions. You can also answer or ask your questions using your smartphone or any device by clicking on the link provided to you in the reminder email you might have received yesterday or today. Small boxes will be circulating through the rows for you to place your question in, and SEAC members will then retrieve these questions and sort them and organize them for answering later on. Just to note, we will be answering questions of a general nature only. Any questions dealing with a particular student or a situation should be answered privately. We will also provide you with the way to go about solving individual issues later on during the presentation. You will have the opportunity to speak with our presenters and SEAC members for 30 minutes following the presentation. And if for some reason you can't stay and you still would like to speak with a SEAC member, you can reach us through our email address. It's very simple, seac@ocsb.ca. Now, depending on the number of questions, we may not be able to answer them all this evening. So we will be providing written answers to all the questions we receive, and we will be attaching them to the presentation slides, which will be posted up on the CSPA website in a few days. So at this point, I would ask the SEAC members to stand up and wave, and I'll try to identify them. So we have Kathy Miedma, representing ABC, Association for Bright Children. We have Helen McRobbie, representing Views for Blind and Low Vision. We have Chantal Demers, representing the Down Syndrome Association. And Mick Keeter, he's at the door. He's the tall fellow. He represents Autism Ontario. And we have a former SEAC member here as well, Linda Barbetta, who represents the Learning Disabilities Association. So thank you very much, all of you, for being here tonight. I hope I haven't forgotten anybody. Oh, and we have John Johnson, representing Brain Injury Association. Okay, I will be coming back to you at the end of this presentation to give you more information about SEAC and share some tips that will hopefully be of use to you. Also, to let you know, in a few days you will receive an evaluation form to fill out. And if you could take a moment to let us know how we did. This is a first for all of us this evening, so we'll be very interested in getting your feedback for possible future presentations. So this is what we're going to be covering tonight. So as you can see, we're trying to cover every aspect of special education, touch on every aspect. So I don't think I'll bother reading through it, but we're going to go through each section.
The slide's not showing.
Oh, it's not showing. Okay. So we'll skip it.
Well, we can read.
Okay, so we're going to have board philosophy, circles of support, the intervention checklist, individual education plan, special education system classes, the IPRC, special education and student services, section 23, MICU, school health support systems, or CCAC, community mental health workers, SEAC, parent guardian involvement, communication, and then resources, and the Q&A at the end. So our presenters tonight, okay, so here at my right, Colleen Beanish. She's the coordinator of special education and student services. We have Mary Gallagher to her right. She is the chief social worker. And we have Dr. Elizabeth Paquette, who is our chief psychologist. So without further ado, I will pass the microphone to Colleen.
Thank you very much for coming this evening. We're so impressed with the turnout, and we understand there are many more people that are at home tuning in through the webinar as well. We're very pleased to have this opportunity to speak to you this evening. And can people over there hear me okay? Okay, thank you. We wanted to start with this slide, Together We're Better, because we truly believe this. We truly believe that there will be better outcomes for all students when all of us work together, when families work together with school teams. And we know that all students, every single student, can be successful in their own way. And we do want you to know that we take very, very seriously the responsibility that you have given us by entrusting to us your most precious possessions, your children. And we always strive to make sure that every single student in our board, regardless of their profile, can become the best that he or she can be. So we absolutely want it to start with that. I apologize, I'm really not as techy as I look with all this stuff around me. So the board philosophy that we just wanted to point out, and you can find much of this information that we're going to cover tonight in the special education report, which is found on the school board website. As you know, our board philosophy is one of inclusion, which is in line with the Ministry of Education in Ontario's philosophy of inclusion. We do recognize that every learner, every student has unique needs, and our goal is to meet the needs of every student in the most enabling environment. And for most students, what that means is regular classrooms with their age-appropriate peers in their community schools. So they're in classrooms with the same people that live on their street, that they're going to Beavers with or taking swimming lessons with, etc. However, we do know that for some students with very, very complex needs, a specialized placement might be more appropriate. And we do have a range of delivery options for students, and we will look at some of those this evening. Regardless of the placement of the student, every student in our school board has the opportunity to participate really fully in everything that goes on at the school. So all of our students have some part of the day where they're integrated in regular classes, they're taking part in assemblies, liturgies, special events, etc. We also believe that when we're programming for students that we really need to build on their gifts and their strengths, and that every individual child does have gifts and strengths. We have to use those as a starting point. We have to develop programs based on those that will continue to nurture more growth and more learning and more success. And that is our goal, success for all.
Okay, for this slide, it's pretty obvious. If we consider our circles of support, this is our reason for being. Everything we do is for and in support of the child. They're always at the center. So the child at the center, then you'll see that wrap around that child in terms of teams of supports. The first layer or level in the school system, of course, includes the classroom teacher, the other teaching staff, resource teachers, our educational assistants. At the kindergarten level, our ECEs, or early education educators, the principals, VPs. At the high school level, we have guidance counselors, and of course, always that team's relationship with the child's parent or guardian. So again, continuing that circles of support, spreading outward. So if need be, if the child requires something different or added for support other than what's actually in the school building, we have school board resources that we can call upon. This would include our various itinerant resource teachers or our itinerant EAs or educational assistants. They're listed in this slide. Our non-teaching professional staff, who include our social workers, our psychology staff, our speech and language pathologists, and our behavior consultants. These are school board staffs who would come into the school to provide support or direct service. So carrying on with the whole notion of circles and that wraparound approach, so if deemed appropriate, the child may need additional supports other than what's already been mentioned. So this next layer of support may include such things as learning technologies, transportation, or perhaps a referral to a systems class, and of course, SEAC. And then, again, spreading even wider, the circles of support. This is where our final circle, we reach out to community for additional support. Examples of this might be our breakfast programs, our exceptionally based associations, Ottawa Police by way of our SROs or school resource officers, OCTC, Ottawa Children's Treatment Center, CISS, Children's Integrated Support Services. Some other partners, the Royal Ottawa Hospital, the Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, Coordinated Access and Coordinated Referral. That's our Section 23 classrooms. That I'll explain a little bit later on. CCAC, Community Care Access Centers, and our Community Resource Centers, which serve different catchment areas of the city.
Okay, so I'm going to talk for the next little while about what special education programs and services actually look like in a school and how we determine when a student needs special education programs and services. So the intervention checklist is the first thing that I want to point out to you, and this is something that all of our staff is very aware of, and it's basically a tiered collaborative approach that's used in schools to help identify when there is a student that might have special education concerns, and then how to address those concerns, what supports to put in place. It's actually a method used to gather data and to create plans, to implement a plan, and then to observe whether or not that plan is having any positive effect and reevaluating. It's definitely a shared responsibility, and it is a tiered model. So in a nutshell, there are 3 stages to the intervention checklist. And remembering that the child is at the center of all of this, and that most of our students are in regular classes or begin in regular classes. So a classroom teacher may be noticing some things or becoming somewhat worried about one of his or her students, and they want to dig a little deeper, get some more information. They want to change some things in their classroom to see whether or not they can have a positive effect for the student in their classroom. And all teachers do this on a day-to-day basis. Having done that, though, for some students, they may still continue to struggle in some way. And struggling could be struggling academically, could be struggling socially, could be struggling emotionally, in many other ways. So if the teacher has done their stage, their first tier of that intervention checklist, and has put a plan in place, has tried it, tweaked it, reevaluated it, and they're still concerned, then the next stage is to go to the school collaborative team. Every school does have a collaborative team. In most schools, it's made up of, in most elementary schools, it would be the principal and the resource teacher and the classroom teacher. There could be others involved as well. High schools would be similar, but there may be a department head as part of that team, or the inclusion teacher as well. And basically, this team now is going to try the same kind of thing, but bringing more experience and more resources to the situation. So are there other things as a school that we can try to figure out what's going on for this particular student, and what could we do differently that might make things better for that student? In many cases, at stage 1 or stage 2, the plans that are developed and implemented are very effective. Sometimes the student continues to have difficulties, and it's at that point that the schools know that they are able to access supports outside of the school from our department in a collaborative team that has central staff attached to it. And Elizabeth is going to talk a little bit more about who those people are later in the presentation. We can't really talk about special education in the Ottawa Catholic School Board or anywhere in Ontario without talking about IEPs, or individual education plans. So any student who is deemed to have special education needs has an individual education plan developed for them. And I know many of you here today, I see some familiar faces in the audience, and I know many of you already know what an individual education plan is, so we're going to try to move through this fairly quickly. But we did think it was important just to clarify some of the main points around IEPs and some of the language that we often use. And we know as educators we're often using acronyms and words that are very particular to education, and so having clarification around some of the language is always a good thing. Basically, an individual education plan is the written plan that describes the programs and services that are required by a particular student, and that's based on assessments. It's based on assessment strengths and needs, and the strengths and needs in particular that will affect a student's ability to learn and be successful at school and demonstrate learning at school. It's a record of any accommodations, modifications, and or alternative expectations that a student may have as part of his or her programming. And it's a record of the specific knowledge and skills that are going to be assessed and evaluated for the purposes of reporting in that particular reporting period. The IEP also includes a transition plan. So until recently, there was a transition plan in an IEP for students 14 and older, but as a result of PPM 156 that came out a couple of years ago, now there's transition plan for all students with an IEP. It's important to know that IEPs are reviewed regularly. They're reviewed and evaluated. They must be reviewed and evaluated regularly. In most cases, that coincides with reporting periods, but it can happen at any time. The IEP is considered a working document. If a situation changes or if new information is available, then it is possible to change an IEP at any time, not only at reporting times, although that is the common timeline for IEP review and updating. You should all have received an IEP by now if your child has one, because the requirement is that it goes home for consultation with you in the first 30 days. Also, it's really important for parents to know that an IEP is a legal document and there's accountability built into it. So it is considered an accountability tool. And the students' parents, you, guardians, principals, staff, anyone who has responsibilities as part of the plan holds people accountable. So if it's written down, it must happen. So an IEP is developed for students who are not formally identified as exceptional, but who do have formal assessments that outline special education needs. And it must also be developed for students who are identified through an IPRC process as exceptional. This is a nice graphic that the 5 ed consultants that work in our department recently put together. And it's great in showing sort of the process that is used in order to develop an IEP. And the development of an IEP is cyclical, but at the outset for a student's first IEP, it's really important that the staff that are working together, the team working together to develop it, have access to reports. And I know you as parents are very generous in sharing reports that you have if they have been done outside of the school system, for example, therapy reports or medical reports or any other kind of private assessment. Often there's an observation that takes place of the student, and often also there's information sharing that happens, so there's back and forth dialogue. All of that then is looked at together, and the team looks for strengths and needs in those assessments, looks for recommendations that are part of those assessments, and they put it all together into an IEP that makes sense for that student at that time based on the assessment information and based on what's going to be happening in the classroom for that student for that particular time. Elaine wanted us to talk a little bit about roles and responsibilities in the school. These that are on these slides are in particular to the IEP, but again, for a student with special education needs, the IEP is the key thing because that's where the programming and the services are documented. So the IEP does need to be developed collaboratively by those who know the student best and by those who are working directly with that student. That can be a whole variety of people depending on the situation. It might include the student if the student is old enough or has the ability to be part of that. It needs to include the parents or guardians in some way. And the teachers could be guidance counselor, could be the principal, could be special education staff that are supporting the student. So there could be a variety of people involved in the development of an IEP. The principal's main role, the principal is accountable and responsible for the IEP, basically. The principal is responsible and accountable for most things that happen in a school, and however, cannot do everything that happens in a school, and so delegates that responsibility. So often in a school, it is the special education teachers that oversee the development of IEPs and making sure that timelines are met, etc. It is important to know, though, that the principal is ultimately accountable, and so, as I mentioned earlier, anything that goes into an IEP that's written down, there is the expectation that that is going to be in place. The classroom teacher plays the role of the curriculum expert, and the special education teacher, who will be on the next slide, is the special education expert. So in most cases, it's a collaboration between the two teachers. It can look different depending on the type of class the student is in and the profile of the student. So for some students, the classroom teachers are the primary person who works on the IEP with consultation with other people in the building. In some cases, the special education resource teacher does a good part of the IEP with consultation with the classroom teachers. In most cases, the special education teacher will be the one that's reviewing reports and assessments and dates and what's happened in previous years and doing the initial sections of the IEP. And the classroom teachers, who are the curriculum experts and the ones that are doing the day-to-day programming in the classroom, are the ones that are writing the expectations for that particular reporting time and the things that will be focused on for evaluation. It's also really important to know when you get an IEP, on the expectations pages, there may only be 3 to 5 things listed there. Those are not the only things that are happening in the classroom for the children. Those are just the things that have been chosen to focus on for evaluation at this particular time period. We do have educational assistants in our schools as well. They are not responsible for programming, but they often are integral in implementing some of the programming. And because of that, they do get to have a special knowledge of the children and the students in their care. So teachers will often go to educational assistants for input into IEP development and evaluation. We do have all kinds of tracking forums also that can be used by educational assistants to help gather information and document progress and track progress on expectations. And the educational assistants, the same as they do not program, they do not evaluate. That's the responsibility of the teachers. However, they do have input into that and they provide information to the teachers. So an example of that I always like to give is many years ago when I was teaching a grade 2-3 class, there was a little boy with Down syndrome in my class. And he worked with an educational assistant for part of his day on many days. He could do the alphabet, he knew his sounds, etc. when he worked with her. For some reason, he would never do it when I asked him to do it. So I'm the teacher, my responsibility to evaluate. Am I going to say that that little boy doesn't know his letters and his sounds? Of course I'm not. I'm going to work very closely with my educational assistant partner who's been keeping close notes and reporting regularly back to me about what he's able to do. So it is all of this, it's really, really important to remember that this is teamwork and it is collaboration. So if your child has an IEP, on the IEP, one, at least of these three things is going to happen, perhaps all three. So when programming is changed for a student, we can have accommodations, modifications, and sorry, I'm just distracted because this screen looks a little bit different than the screen in front of me. The title is Accommodations, Modifications, and Alternative Programming. So accommodations, and I'm going to go quickly through these. We start with accommodations normally. So as Mary pointed out, we always want to start with the child in the center. And in the classroom, we always want to start with the provincial curriculum for that student's grade. And we want to do everything we can by changing, differentiating, supporting to see if we can have students be successful with their grade level curriculum in their classroom. For some students, once we've gone through the intervention checklist and we realize that there needs to be other supports in place, we will start by putting accommodations into place based on recommendations from reports. And accommodations mean some kind of a change to the teaching practices, the instruction, to the environment, to the learning environment, the classroom, or to the assessment methods to help the students show what they know and they can do. It does not change the provincial curriculum expectations in any way. So for many students, once accommodations, the appropriate accommodations are put in place, that allows them to be successful, kind of evens out the playing field, that allows them to show and do and let people know what they're able to do. For some students, the grade level expectations are not realistic for them at that time. And so we do have the ability through the individual education plan to change grade level expectations. And you can change grade level expectations in three ways. You can change the grade level, so you can go to a lower grade or a higher grade. I'm mostly talking about kids who are struggling. We also have gifted kids who need to be challenged, in which case we may be looking at different kinds of programming. So you can change the grade level. You can stay within the grade level but reduce the number of expectations. Or you can take an expectation from the grade level and change the complexity. And again, if you change the complexity, you can make it less complex or you can make it more complex. So modifications mean that somehow you have changed the provincial curriculum for the grade. So accommodations, still provincial curriculum, no change to the grade curriculum. Modifications, we've now changed the curriculum for that grade in one of three ways. And the last thing that you might see in an IEP are alternative expectations. And alternative expectations are expectations outside of the provincial curriculum completely. So in a minute I've got a slide that lists some of these, but things like organizational skills, for example, self-advocacy, social skills. So these are not part of the curriculum, but are really important things for many of our students to be working on, and we want to make sure that these are recorded and tracked and evaluated. And so they are called alternative expectations. The accommodations, I'm just quickly going to say again, you can change instruction methods, environmental setup of the classroom, or assessment methods. And the instructional methods means that the teacher is going to change some way in which they're delivering the information to the student. The environment means they're going to change the environment some way. So they could be adding visuals, they could be changing the person's seat, they could be reducing sound, etc. So instructional and environmental accommodations are meant to help students input information, so to get the information into the brain. The accommodations for assessment would be, instead of assessing in a paper pencil kind of way, perhaps giving an oral assessment or some kind of a digital assessment, or allowing someone to build something rather than writing an essay and then explain what they've just built. So that's a different way for students to output information, for getting things out of their brain, for students to be able to show what they do know and what they can do, even though a traditional pen and paper test may not allow them to do that. And this just gives some examples. There are lots more examples that you can find on the ministry website, but these are some of the more common ones. I won't go through them all. And the alternative program areas these are just some of the many, but these are some of the more common. So again, remembering these would be alternative expectation pages that would be outside of the curriculum. Not all students with an IEP have these, but some students do. Leadership skills might be something we would see on a gifted student's IEP. We've got daily living skills. Orientation and mobility is something we might have on an IEP for a student who is blind or has low vision, etc. We're in the process of getting an IEP parent fact sheet ready. This was requested through SEAC, and it was a great idea. So again, the 5 consultants that work in our department worked very hard to prepare a 1-page, 2-sided fact sheet. The draft was just presented recently to SEAC for feedback, and we got some excellent suggestions. So the 5 consultants are back at the drawing board trying to make everything fit, and it's coming along very nicely. So the plan is that when this is ready, the fact sheet will be sent home with a student's very first IEP. Then after that would be available upon request and will be available anytime digitally on various websites. So all the information there draws on a number of documents. Most of it is what part of the presentation that you'll be hearing tonight. And it just really tries to highlight really some important facts for parents and guardians. So that should be coming out soon, so you can keep your eyes open for that. So for some students, and we talked earlier about the range of options for placement in the school board, and our belief that students do well, and we start students in their regular classrooms in their community schools with their same aged peers. However, we do know that some students with complex needs may require a special education class, or that may be an option for them. It may not even be that they require it, because we have many students of a profile that could be in a special education system class, but the families have chosen for them to stay in their schools, and they're programmed there appropriately as well. So we have students of every profile that are in regular classes, and we have students who are in special education system classes. So I'm just going to very quickly tell you what some of these classes are. For more information, the link is there at the bottom of the slide. You can go to the special education report, which is on the website. I believe Chapter 3 has all of the classes listed and has a longer description and has the criteria for the classes. At the kindergarten level, we have something called assessment program. We have 4 of these classes across the system, and they are for students who maybe don't have the really great school readiness skills yet. So because of their profile, and usually there's a lag in development, they don't have the ability to take turns, follow a routine. They don't have developed play skills yet. Any one of those things would not be concerning, but altogether it might lead us to believe that one of these classes might be a good place for them to start, because they're smaller classes with more staff. The other thing about all of these classes is the students are integrated into regular classes for part of the day, and that's something that's really important and that we're very proud of. So we don't have any classes that are completely segregated, where students are never with other students in the school. So the assessment program are for students with various developmental delays and disorders at the kindergarten level. The language classes are half-day classes. They're primary classes for students in grade 1 to 3 with language impairments. And the idea behind those classes is that the students get specialized programming from a special education teacher, and who has a lot of support from one of our speech and language pathologists. And then the other half day, they're in the regular class in their home school in order to put some of those skills into practice in a regular class. The learning strategies classes are for students with significant learning disabilities in grade 5, and the purpose of those classes as well is to teach students who have significant learning disabilities learn new strategies that may help them be successful and to return to a regular class the following year. The junior special needs classes and the life skills classes are for individuals with a mild intellectual disability profile. And again, these are classes where the students are integrated into regular classes for part of their day as well. There is support for academics in these classes, and there's also a focus on life skills and pre-vocational skills. The education for community living classes we have at all of our levels, primary, junior, intermediate, and senior, and those are for students who have a developmental disability or intellectual disability. And again, for these students, I think probably we have about half in regular classes and about half in special education system classes. It's just a different way of offering the programming. All of these classes are taught by special education teachers. And the last one is our developmental education program. We have 5 at the elementary level and 5 at the secondary level. And they are for students who have intellectual or developmental disabilities and also significant medical and or physical needs. And they are a partnership with CCAC, and we're going to talk a little bit more about who CCAC is and what they do. So we could talk the whole 2 hours about the system classes, but you can get more information about them if you would like. Okay, so an IPRC, and we're going to go through this part fairly quickly as well. An IPRC is something that is necessary for a student who's going to go to a system class, a special education class. An IPRC decides, so the I stands for identification. Your slides look different than our slides. So the P stands for placement, the R for review, and the C for committee. And an IPRC basically does what the letters say. So the committee looks at information and determines whether or not a student is indeed identified as exceptional based in criteria from the ministry in Ontario. And if they are exceptional, in what category are they exceptional? And then what should their placement be? And this is something that then is reviewed annually. So once a student is identified through the IPRC process, there's an annual review by committee every school year. Is an IPRC necessary? It is necessary, as I say, for special education system class placements, and it is necessary for students who have already been identified through the process because it's required that they continue to be reviewed. And it's necessary upon parent or guardian written request as outlined in the Education Act. An IPRC is not required, though, when both the parents and the school agree that the student's special education needs can be programmed for in the regular classroom. So the appropriate programs and services to meet students' needs, as I mentioned before, are documented in the IEP, the Individual Education Plan, and that is key. Students who are in regular classes and have not been formally identified through an IPRC have the same access to all available programs and services as their identified peers. Having said that this does not in any way override the IPRC process or in the Regulation 180-198 or the Education Act. And if parents request an IPRC, the school will be setting that up. The other thing to note with that, and schools may have this conversation with you because there is still confusion around this and in the community. So there are many third-party private professionals that will still recommend an IPRC because they're not aware that programs and services are available without that. Because years ago that was the case. It was never the case in our school board, but it was the case in many school boards, that if a student was not identified, they didn't have an IEP and they could not receive programs and services. That's never been the case since I've been teaching in this school board, and it certainly is not the case today in 2015. If a private professional's assessment comes in, that is reviewed and programming is set up based on the information from that assessment data. So the IEP is key. It's very, very key. The IPRC is not required to obtain an IEP. The strengths and needs are generated from the formal assessments that you bring in, or that we may provide for you as our department staff. And again, the most important message that I hope you'll leave with today is that decisions are made best when schools and parents and guardians work together in collaboration, because everyone does have the best interest of the child at heart. There's lots more information about IPRCs available to you in the parent guide, and this was just updated last year with the help of SEAC as well, and it's available on the board website. And you're probably tired of listening to my voice, so time for someone else.
Okay, so I'm going to talk to you briefly about the teams that are supporting the school. So these are the collaborative teams that come from our department. And we have a multidisciplinary team that supports each school. The teams are comprised of the staff that you can see that are on the slide. And the staff that would be available would depend on the needs of the child. So all of these people support every school in our system, but they're not all supporting every student. Our department's divided into 5 teams, more or less based on geography. So that way we found that it works very well for them, that they become cohesive as a group. So the special education consultant works predominantly with one speech and language pathologist, maybe a couple behavior consultants, etc. So we have a cohesive team from our end that they get to know each other and the schools get to know them. In terms of accessing these staff members, the special education consultants, who's the team leader, they're accessed directly by the school. So a principal or a special education teacher can call up the special education consultant and ask their questions, seek guidance on how to deal with a particular situation. What we refer to as our non-teaching professional staff, so our psychology, speech and language, behavior consultants, and social work, they each have a formal referral process that meets the college requirements for psych, social work, and the speech and language pathologist. So we're governed by a college. We have ethics and code of conduct that have to be adhered to, and that's reflected in our referral process. So the school staff will consult with the professional before initiating a referral. And the reason for that is once we discuss the issues, it may be that if they come to me as a psychologist, I may say, well, I think the person that you need to start with may be the speech and language pathologist, as opposed to starting with a psych assessment, for example. So we do that preliminary consultation. And before any actual contact or beginning any assessment, parents would sign an informed consent. So if it is deemed that yes, the student would best be served by a speech and language assessment, for example, a form would come home for you to sign, and the speech and language pathologist would be giving the parent a call to indicate what they're going to be doing and make sure that you're aware of everything that's going to be happening. The social workers can also be accessed directly by parents. So a parent can choose to call directly the social worker assigned to their school to access their services. You see we have a variety of itinerant resource teachers who have specialized in specific areas, and they're available to support schools programming for students with needs in specific areas. So for example, we have 2 teachers who are responsible for assistive technology. So they service all the schools on the board, working with teachers to help them work with the assistive technology assigned to students. For example, our one gifted teacher, she works across the system looking at supporting schools and developing the program. So the actual service is offered by the school, but our staff consult to the school. And we also have the 3 itinerant educational assistants who are assigned to our department, and those are accessed by a principal submitting a request to the special education consultant, and they look at the needs across the system and decide priorities for those 3 itinerant EAs. The psychology and speech and language staff, they will complete assessments for students. So as Colleen was just referring to, we do welcome assessments from private practitioners, but we also have our own staff that can complete assessments. And as I said earlier, they would not be done without your informed consent from the parent or guardian. So we do recognize assessments that are completed by private community professionals. And just a little caveat is, as long as they're completed by a registered professional from the college. So for example, there is the Ontario College of Psychologists or the College of Audiologists and Speech and Language Pathologists of Ontario. So if a parent is considering having a private assessment done, we recommend that you have it done by somebody who is regulated across the province. We will use those assessments for programming suggestion, identifying specialized equipment needs, etc. When those assessments come into the system, the speech and language pathologist or the psychologist, as appropriate, they'll assist the schools in interpreting the reports, helping them to implement the recommendations from those private assessments. So that becomes our role then, is to help the school handle that information in the best way. The recommendations would be considered, and the school team, oftentimes a private assessment will come in with many recommendations, and it's not feasible and not advisable necessarily to implement all those recommendations in one time. So then the school board staff would help the school decide which is the best one to start with, put a priority in terms of the recommendations. In terms of the assessments that we complete with our own staff, we don't have formal wait lists. Often I know parents will say, well, what's the wait list? Or the school may tell you it's going to be a while. Our wait lists are fluid, meaning that certainly the school has a list of students that they're considering for an assessment. And as Colleen talked about earlier, the tiers of intervention, that pyramid. So as soon as a teacher becomes concerned about a student, does not mean that we need to have, for example, a psychological assessment done. There's steps for that teacher to go through to look at different interventions that they may want to put in place that may be totally successful and the student closes the gap and there's no need for our assessment. And I say the wait lists are fluid because sometimes a student may be presenting with certain needs, but for whatever reason, another student rises to the top, whether something is going on in their home and their behavior becomes more crucial at that point. So the behavior consultant may start with that student before another student. So those wait lists, if you want to say, are always fluid. So we can't say exactly who's going to be next and who's going to be next after that, etc. Our speech and language pathologists, they do not provide direct therapy to students. What they do is they do provide a clinical assessment that helps the school to identify the strengths and the needs in the area of language skills. And then they can consult with the classroom teachers for the programming. So the programming that they recommend happens in the classroom with the classroom teacher. They will complete speech screening assessments to initiate referrals to CCAC, so Community Care Access Center, who will do speech therapy. Okay, next one. Sorry. I guess I better do mine too. We do have additional staff in our department that do provide what we would call indirect support to the schools and the students. So for example, we have a leadership team. Mary Donahue referred to it in her introductory video. So the leadership team is comprised of the superintendent, the principal, the coordinator, myself, chief psychologist and mental health lead, and our chief social worker, who's also the team social worker for our social emotional learning team. So as the leadership team for the department, our task is to oversee all of the department initiatives, ensure that our services are responsive to the needs of the system. So we hear what's going on from our staff that are out on the front line, and our job is to respond to those needs. As a chief psychologist and mental health lead, I oversee all of the psychology staff in the department, as well as the speech and language pathologists. And I'm also responsible for the board's mental health strategy. Our chief social worker oversees the social work staff as well as the behavior consultant staff, and as mentioned, provides clinical support to our social emotional learning team. We also have a position called the ABA Expertise Lead. It is currently filled by a psychologist. That position was funded by the Ministry of Education to support implementation of PPM 140. And she has a responsibility of providing and coordinating training on ABA, or Applied Behavior Analysis, instructional methods and resources at the board and school level. So her job is to look at the needs of the system in terms of ABA practices, specifically for our students with autism, and develop the programs, the trainings, and supporting those staff. We also have a psychoeducational consultant who supports our social emotional learning team. So along with the chief social worker, they support the teachers and the EAs who make up that team. So she may be providing social emotional assessments as required for students. She may be co-facilitating groups that they're running to help students develop those skills. She may be coordinating the evaluation of the program and the interventions that are being implemented. We also have two full-time positions. These are speech and language pathology assistants. So they do provide direct service. So they work under the supervision of the speech and language pathologist. And so they work in blocks of intervention. So following their assessments, the speech and language pathologist may identify a student who would benefit from a block of direct therapy by one of these speech and language assistants. And obviously, a department of our size would not run smoothly without the support of our three administrative assistants and the executive assistant for Mary Donahue.
Okay, so for our Section 23 program, so if you remember the circles of support, if you remember the circles of support that we presented earlier in the slideshow, this is that last layer. So Section 23 program, Section 23 refers to the section of legislation in the Education Act. That's why it's called the Section 23 programs, also known as coordinated referral. Section 23 programs are provincial-wide. Section 23 is both an educational system and also to a therapeutic day treatment program. So it's a dual agreement between both Catholic and public English school boards. Our partners in Ottawa are the ones that are listed on the slide. So Steps to Success is a program, and our therapeutic partner with Steps is CHEO, Children's Hospital of Eastern Ontario, and that program is housed in St. Luke, Ottawa. Crossroads is another therapeutic program. It's at Frank Ryan School in Alta Vista. Fisher Park unit is the Robert Smart unit, and that's where it's housed at the Fisher Park School. Back on Track is another CHEO program, or Children's Hospital program. It's housed at Immaculata High School. Brookfield High School is the Brookfield unit, and that one, our therapeutic partner is the Royal Ottawa Hospital. And then St. Paul High School houses our CAS unit. Consultation with the school, the parent or guardian, and multidisciplinary team begins the process for a student for a referral. If it's determined that such a program would benefit a student, the referral is taken forward, presented by one of our school board's clinical staff at a committee, that clinical staff being social work or psychology, a member of the school team, and also the parent or guardian is present at the presentations. The responsibility for the Section 23 in Ottawa for the English Catholic and English Public boards falls under the responsibility of the Ottawa Catholic School Board under the Superintendent of Special Education and Student Services. Next slide, thank you. So school health support services, they're delivered through Community Care Access Center, or CCAC, and you'll see these are the programs: the care coordinator, occupational therapy, physiotherapy, speech and language articulation therapy, nursing, and nutrition. So CCAC is our health support partner. There's an agreement with the Ministry of Education for them to provide health services in the schools across the province. The care coordinator oversees all of these services, and they all require referrals from the school. Preschoolers may access the services through OCTC, Ottawa Children's Treatment Centre, and the transfer of services to CCAC should happen automatically. However, we often recommend that the teachers check with the care coordinator when a student is new to the school. Each area of specialty has their own criteria and regarding eligibility. And so community mental health workers in our schools. So through the mental health strategy, but the provincial mental health strategy, school boards were provided with community mental health workers to provide direct services within our schools. In Ottawa, these are our mental health partners. In addition, some other agencies may provide mental health or psychoeducational services within our school. And these agencies and their programs are vetted through our External Agencies Committee. So if you take a look at the community mental health workers, you'll see that Youth Services Bureau, we get 0.5 of a worker for our schools. Crossroads is 1 worker. Robert Smart is 1 worker. CCAC Mental Health and Addiction Nurses. Rita Wood Addiction Workers, and External Agencies. So all of those are our partners. Okay, see if I can get in. There we go. Okay.
Okay, and finally back to me. Okay, so Special Education Advisory Committee, or SEAC. So who are we? Okay, well, first of all, I think the most important thing to know is that we are parent volunteers. We have children in the school board, just like you, children with special needs. And we belong to organizations that represent various exceptionalities. So I presented to you some of our SEAC members who are here this evening. So currently we have 7 association members. Okay, they're listed on the screen. So we have Autism, Down Syndrome, Association for Bright Children, Views, Brain Injury, Communication Disorders, that's me, Fetal Alcohol Syndrome. We can have up to 12 association members. Right now we have 7. We are still looking for more members, especially somebody from the learning disabilities community, as the prevalence of children with learning disabilities is 1 in 8. So I think it would be great to have that voice on the committee as well. So a shout out to anybody who might be interested. Linda will be very happy to take your name. We have the possibility of having 3 community members. We don't have any at this time. And finally, we also have 3 trustees on the committee who are excellent at representing our needs and our concerns to the whole Board of Trustees. We have Trustee Mullen, who is here. He arrived a couple of minutes after I introduced the trustees. Trustee Sandra Moore, who's here as well, and Trustee Warren. Next slide. Okay, so very briefly, so what do we do? What are our roles and responsibilities as a committee? So we make recommendations. Okay, we are an advisory committee. Okay, we can't tell the board what to do, but we can make recommendations on any matters affecting the establishment, the development, and the delivery of special education programs and services. Okay, for our students with special needs at the board. How do we do that? Well, because we represent associations, we share the views of our individual associations, what is best for our children. We advocate as a group for all students with special needs. I think that's important. We have one voice for all of our students. And we communicate concerns and questions we receive from parents. So we need to hear from you. We also sit on various board committees, for example, accessibility and safe schools. Next slide. Okay, so how do SEAC members help parents and guardians? Well, when we act as a resource, okay? we listen to concerns, we offer support and guidance. We also collaborate with CSPA and PIC on topics of interest to parents. For example, last year in November, we had a Parenting Now event where we presented 3 different workshops for parents of students with special needs. One was on the IEP, the other one was on advocacy, and one was with service coordination. And you can also reach us directly. We have an email address now. So it's right there, very simple, ciac@ocsb.ca. And when you do send us an email, just let us know who do you want to speak to, which rep. And if you don't have a rep that represents your specific situation, I'll be very happy to just jump right in and give you any information or help I can. So, meetings. We are provincially mandated committee. Okay, every school must have a SEAC, and we are mandated to have 10 meetings a year, so that is usually once a month. Here at the board, we meet every 3rd Wednesday in this room at 7 o'clock. However, there are a few changes this year, so I would suggest that you check the board's website for a change in dates. For example, the next meeting is Monday, November 16th, as opposed to Wednesday, November 18th. Parents are always welcome to come and observe the meetings and listen in. If you have concerns or questions, okay, you contact a SEAC member and then you say, is it possible to have this issue raised at a meeting and discussed? For your general information, the agenda and the minutes of all the meetings are posted on the website under SEAC. Okay, now my bit with regards to some practical suggestions, okay, for parents to work with your school to ensure that your child gets the best possible education and outcome. Okay, first tip, share. Okay, it was mentioned before. Share all the professional assessments that you may have done privately and any updates, right, with the school before the IPRC and or before the IEP is written. Okay, because when they have the information, then they can do a better job of incorporating that into the IEP. Tell them about your child. Okay, you know your child best. You are the expert on your child. Okay, create an all about me package, and the resource teacher ought to be able to provide you with one. Okay, there are 3 different kinds of packages depending on the grade level of your child. Or you can also create your own binder with a picture of your child and indicate your child's strengths, his interests, the dislikes, their abilities. If they have behavior issues, what are the reasons for that behavior issue? And also include the strategies that you know work best, okay, to overcome these behavior issues. And the strategies that you know work best to teach your child. So what do they prefer? Okay, again, you are the expert on your child. Be proactive. Don't wait for them to ask you for information. Provide it. Share it at the very beginning of the year with your new teacher, with the EA, with the resource teacher. Okay, don't be shy to go up there and give them the information. If necessary, provide additional information about your child's specific condition. Okay, any literature, articles, books that will help the teacher know more about your child's diagnosis. Okay, not all teachers have special education. I'm thinking about the classroom teachers. And even if they do, they can't possibly be experts in all areas of special education. So giving them any pertinent information is going to be great for your child. Now, if you know what's happening in the classroom, you can offer to provide material that the school doesn't have so that your child can participate with the others. For example, manipulatives. For example, my daughter, the class was doing some beading. They were using very tiny beads. She can't use those. So they asked me, well, can she do beading? Yes, but she needs bigger beads. So we had some at home. I brought them into school. She's doing it with everybody else, right? So she is, participating with the class. So if you can ask the teacher, what are you doing? What can I bring that you don't have? It could be games that they can play at recess, and something that you know your child likes, and then that you can engage other children to play with your child. It could be books. Any other kinds of things that you think might be helpful for your child. And again, you can ask them if there's anything else they need. And then you'll be happy to try and provide. This way you're showing them that, hey, you're willing to work with them. And I think that's a really important thing. You want to show that you want to work with the school to do the best for your child. Next slide. Okay. As Colleen mentioned, be involved in the IEP, a consultation process. So what does that mean? Share with the school and teachers your vision for your child, okay? Your expectations for your child, the goals you have for him, your dreams. When you do receive the IEP, if you don't understand, ask questions. Ask for clarification. Say, I don't quite understand that. What does that mean? Okay, don't be shy. And feel free to make suggestions based on what you want for your child. They could be educational. You'd like to have emphasis on reading, emphasis on math, emphasis or some other educational goal. It could also be goals with regards to social goals. You say, I really would like my child to develop social skills. I want my child to have a friend. It could be self-help skills. So, have a conversation. Ask that these things can be added to your child's IEP. And as always, keep a record of all your communications. Okay, because often then we lose track. What have we said? What have we haven't said? Okay, next slide. Another important thing, speak with the teacher. Okay, as soon as a problem pops up. So have the teacher, once you've discussed the situation, the problem, have the teacher communicate their plan of action. Okay, what are they going to do about the situation? Ask them, how long is it going to take to have this implemented? A week, 2 weeks? Then you check back. You ask them, how is it going? Okay? And it may happen that nothing's happened, right? Teachers can get distracted, okay? They're juggling many balls in the air, as many balls as they have students. So by checking up on them and asking, it's a gentle reminder, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. And you can tell them ahead of time, okay, in 2 weeks I'm going to call back and see how things are going. I came across this book called The Dance with Professionals, and I thought this really applied very nicely. It's about the partnership between parents and doctors, parents and therapists, parents and teachers. So you and the teacher are dance partners, and you need to learn the steps of the dance together. Okay? And there's going to be a learning curve. And what happens? Sometimes a partner steps on the other partner's toes. And what do you do in that situation? You say, oops, I'm sorry. Okay, an apology on either side is very powerful. It allows you to move forward. So I strongly suggest practice the steps of the dance. What can you do? What are some of the steps of the dance? Keep the lines of communication open. Have a positive attitude, but be persistent in a nice way. Be willing to work with them to find solutions in the best interest of your child. And recognize staff efforts. I think that's an important part that we almost always forget. We complain about what's not going well, but then when somebody actually does something well, we don't say anything. So it's really important to recognize what they are doing. Express your appreciation. Let the principal know when someone really comes through for your child. Okay, we always like good news. Okay, slide number, next one, tip 4, if the concerns persist. Okay, so it may be time to speak to someone with greater authority or greater knowledge. Okay, and you can certainly contact a SEAC member about this. We'll be very happy to help you through this whole process. Okay, the field of special education is vast. Okay, it's evolving all the time. Teachers cannot know everything, and they need to rely on the board's professionals. So go through the steps. First, you talk with the teacher, then the resource teacher, the vice principal or principal, the special education consultant. Okay, then the coordinator, which would be Colleen, and the principal of Spec Ed, Lynn Coletti, who could not be here tonight, unfortunately. And finally, the superintendent of special education. Always remember, be polite, non-confrontational. Okay, remember, it's all about your child. Be flexible with solutions. Know what is negotiable and what is not negotiable. And remember, it's better to build bridges than to build walls. And I've inserted here trustees. Trustees are very important as well. okay? They are elected to represent the needs of the community, and that includes you. And for them to be able to represent the community, they need to hear from the people they represent. Now, one of the major roles of the trustees is to approve the board budget and decide how and where the money is spent. Let them know what the issues are. The more they hear from parents, the better they will be able to make decisions regarding budget. Finally, if you want to connect with like-minded parents or want more community information, okay, join an association. Even if you don't want to go to meetings, most of them have excellent resources on their websites. So a lot of interesting things that you can find out on various association websites. A lot of them have chat rooms, and you can also go to meetings. Join a support group. Okay, some associations have support groups. There's one called WIMS, Walk in My Shoes, which is for all parents of students with developmental disabilities. And finally, I suggest join the CSPA mailing list, okay, to be able to get to know about further upcoming presentations that hopefully we're going to be putting together for parents of students with special needs. Okay, and I'd like to just finish now with some resources that were put together for you. So, as Colleen has mentioned, there's the special education, the special education report, the SEAC page, CSPA, and next, the individual education plan. Okay, so this is a really nice document that talks all about how the goals are written, et cetera, et cetera. So I would suggest you have a look at it. It's very interesting. Growing success. Learning for all, are there good documents and shared solutions, a guide for preventing and resolving conflicts, and finally engaging parents of students with special needs. Just want to mention too that the SEAC page also has a list of resources, so if you go to that page and you click on resources, there are also other links, including to some associations as well. So I guess this concludes our presentation for this evening. Just a reminder, the presentation will be made available on the CSPA website, as well as any answers to questions that we weren't able to answer this evening. So anyways, I hope this was enlightening and informative for you. And now I'm going to thank our presenters, and I'm going to pass the mic back to Colleen, and we're going to now look at questions.
Okay, we have a busy team of parents helping us to gather the questions and compile the questions and categorize them. So we probably won't have time to answer them all. We're quickly trying to go through to see which ones are similar to each other so we can answer them more generally in categories. So there are a few questions around IEPs. And the first one was this: should the parents be consulted before the IEP is drafted? Do we have to request to be consulted? It's an excellent question. Parents must be consulted as part of the IEP process. But what that looks like is different from school to school and even student to student within a school. So for many of the schools in our school board, especially large schools, the consultation looks like a letter that accompanies the IEP that goes home within the first 30 days. And the letter usually asks you for your input. It will ask you if you would like to see any changes, if you're happy with it, please sign it and send it back, etc. So that is the most common form of consultation. The school really does want to know if you want more consultation than that. So when it's asking you, would you like to see some changes? If you would, please let them know. If you feel that that is best done personally and you would like a meeting to do that, then request a meeting. In some situations, the parents will have had a meeting with the school prior to that IEP being developed and will have had some input before. Sometimes the input comes after, and either way is fine. It's whatever's going to work best to get the best IEP for that individual student. Another question around IEPs. Are there any reasons for the extra pages that were mentioned, like behavior, medical, or social emotional goals? So I think that's referring to the alternative expectations pages that I was referring to that are outside of the provincial curriculum. So the reason for, so most students with individual education plans do not have those pages. So those pages would be developed for students where there are assessments that indicate that there are specific significant needs in those areas that are related to school success. So if you're unsure whether or not your child should have those, again, have the conversation with the staff at your school. Another question, are the accommodations on the accommodation page only for accommodations, or can they be used for modified or alternative? So I think I understand what this is getting at. For subject areas that are modified or for alternative program areas, most accommodations, not all, but most accommodations are broad across the board accommodations that would apply in most, if not all, subject areas. So if I understand the question correctly, the answer is yes. I hope I understood it correctly. If IEP goals are not achieved for this year, does my child move along to another grade next year? And the usual answer for that is yes. So it's very rare that students are retained in a grade. The current research on that does not support the practice of retention, except in very exceptional circumstances. So while sometimes it may make sense, it may seem to make sense at this particular time, if you think long term, it may not in fact make sense. There's research that shows students that are retained because they haven't achieved grade expectations will do better the following year when they are basically reviewing what they did the previous year, but then the year after that they will fall behind again if it's a learning process deficit of some sort that's causing that. So there are rare exceptions to that, but they are rare. Again, really good conversation to have with your school team and the supports that are available to the school team from our department. There are a few questions around how do I know if I have an IEP that's a good IEP? Some seem to be light on information. Are there any samples anywhere? There are some samples at the back of the document that was shown, the purple document, the link is there, the IEP guide. There are some samples at the back of that document, and there are also some samples on the Cont'd website. So I believe the very last resource was a link to another Cont'd document about engaging parents. On the same website, there are some IEP samples. It's very hard to determine by looking at samples whether or not your child's IEP is a good or a bad IEP because they're different for everybody. They're individual. So if many students only require a small number of accommodations in order to be acceptable, they're going to have a very small IEP. Students of more complex needs may have a whole series of accommodations. Most subject areas may be modified, and they may have several areas of alternative curriculum that they're also working on. So that student's IEP is going to be much lengthier. So, if you have concerns about the quality of the IEP, again, it's a good discussion to have with the team at the school, the classroom teacher, resource teacher, and principal. They certainly have access to the special education consultants and itinerant teachers in our department that can help in that area as well. A question that was in the IEP section that is related in regards to transition planning. So the question is, how are transitions handled from elementary to middle school? Really great, or high school. Really great question. And we put a lot of emphasis on transition planning in our school board. And right after Christmas, the process will begin for those students. So when the special education consultants and some other team members from our department will go out to meet at every school in January and early February. They already have a list and know the students with complex needs in each school. They will be checking with the schools to say, these are the students that we know, these are the 3 students that I have on my list that are in your school in grade 6 with complex needs that may need some additional transition planning. Can you please confirm that these are the correct students? Have we missed any? Are there any more? And so right at that time, we've identified who they are. We do then match someone from our department to each student to be a support to the school if they need it to help with transition planning. And the transition plans, again, look different student to student because some students need more than others. But it could include an IPRC if the student has been identified, that the review would take place at the new school rather than the elementary school. There may be a transition planning meeting that takes place at the high school. This is a great idea for students with complex needs, where the team from the current school will go, and the high school team will be there, and the people who support from our team will be there. And we look at what are the strengths and the needs, the interests, etc. All the things that Aileen talked about in the All About Me package. You may be given an All About Me package at that meeting for you to complete. Often visits are set up. For some students, 1 visit to the new school is all that's necessary. For other students who may be anxious, several visits may need to be set up. Usually high schools will make sure that families of students with special needs are invited to barbecues, all of those things, and tour of the school. Often a book or a DVD is created of the student in the school in key places with key people that they can have over the summer to get ready to the idea to be there. Also, it's suggested that another call the last week of the summer back to the school just to let them know how the summer was going. For some students, another quick visit at that point is a good idea as well. So it is really hard to answer these questions because it's not the same for everybody. One thing about special education that I've learned over my many years in special education is it's not black and white. There are a lot of gray areas, and that's why it's special and that's why it's individual. So the important thing is have the continued dialogue. There are a few questions around educational assistance. They're all a little bit different from one another, but what we can do is take a minute just to describe what the process is for allocating EAs in our school board. So the process for that begins in late April every year. Again, the special education consultants go out to each and every school, and they meet with the principal and the resource team to create a profile of the school, which is basically a list of the students in the school that have a profile that requires them to have additional support from an educational assistant. So those profiles are created, and then there is a 2-day committee that sits here at the board that's comprised of people from our department as well as about 7 principals from both elementary and high school and various schools from different areas in the city. By that point, in most years, budget has finished, and not in all years, but in most years, there is a set number of educational assistants that we know we have to staff for the following year. And the job of that committee, and it's not an easy job, is to figure out how that defined number of EAs will be distributed across the school board in order to meet the needs of all of the students that are on those profiles. Somebody asked, why are we cutting EAs in our board? We absolutely are not cutting EAs in our board. When I first started in this department, we had about 120 EAs. We now have 451.25 EAs, and that was an additional 20 permanent EAs, or actually casual EAs, that were hired in the fall. So the last kind of piece of that is in the fall, the consultants go out again and do a check at every school to see if there have been any moves over the summer or any new registrations of students of similar profile to those that were presented at the committee in the spring, so that they can also be accounted for. Educational assistants are not assigned to students, and they're not assigned to specific students. They're assigned to the schools. So the school principal will find out the number of staff, educational assistant staff he or she has, and then it's up to the principal to allocate those resources, those individual educational assistants in the school to meet all of the needs in their school. The thing that's important to understand too is those needs are constantly in flux. So someone who may be the neediest student today or last year may not be the neediest student this year or next year. And isn't that great when that happens? So that is the reason for the assignment to be flexible, so that principals and school teams can address needs as they arise. There are a number of questions around technology as well, so technology, assistive technology, and about how students learn to use their assistive technology. So the process for that actually has changed a little bit this year. We have a new initiative that we're really pleased with, and how it's been received and how it's working so far. In the past, when students, and this is in particular, some of these questions are around learning disabilities. So in the past, when students with learning disabilities or fine motor issues or language impairments perhaps received computer technology, they often got Kurzweil or Dragon Naturally Speaking, and those were programs that required, they're difficult programs to navigate, and they required training. So we did have trainers, and they were contracted out from an outside agency to come in and to train students on these devices. Over the years, technology is more and more embedded in classrooms. Technology, this is a Chromebook that Aileen and I have been sharing tonight. Many students have Chromebooks, whether or not it's purchased through SIA funding, or it's a school board purchased Chromebook. The equipment that students with special needs are using and the equipment that the person beside them without special needs is using looks very much the same. And we have all kinds of extensions that are free now that are available to everybody. So they're essential, maybe essential for a student with a learning disability to have a text-to-speech feature, but it still may be very beneficial to the other people that are working around that student. So we've made some changes. We have partnered with the Learning Technologies Department in the school board, and the school board has hired SIA coaches. And the coaches are available and have already started. They've been into schools. They will go in and they will work in classrooms. And they work in classrooms with the teacher, with all of the students, but their focus is the student with the SIA purchased equipment. And they're trying to make the embedding of technology seamless in every classroom for every student. So that's working quite well. For students, again, that may have more complex needs or more complex equipment, we still have 2 assistive technology itinerant teachers that Elizabeth was mentioning in our department, and they are available to go out and work with schools and with students. There is a couple of questions here around students with mild intellectual disabilities and other intellectual disabilities, developmental disabilities, about the programming for them in high school, and about programming, trying to balance reading, remedial, basically programming looking at how do we balance academics versus life skills. So both great questions. We do have special education classes for students with mild intellectual disabilities in the junior grades and in intermediate, grade 7 and 8. Prior to that, we find that students with the differentiation that occurs in all of our classrooms and in primary classrooms, they, with that, manage very well. Most students with a mild intellectual disability, if they have the proper programming, services, and supports in place through the IEP, do quite well in a regular classroom in meeting their IEP goals. For some students, though, there are other issues. There may be emotional issues. There may be students that are feeling that they're standing out, or that they're not, they're struggling with stomach aches, or they don't want to go to school anymore, they're shutting down. For some of those students, again, in discussion with the school team and the parents, it may be decided that one of these specialized placements would be good for them for a time anyway. The reason that we don't have specific system classes for students past grade 8 in life skills is because in our school board we have a very, very wide range of options in the different streams that are available in the different pathways in grades 9 to 12. So we have focus programs, we have K courses, we have locally developed courses, and we do have the ability for students to continue to have an IEP and to have alternative expectations pages as part of their programming. For students with more significant intellectual disabilities, there is always that challenge of balancing academics and life skills. And it's a very hard question to answer again because it is so student specific. But in general, the lower level grades, so the primary and the junior classes, would have still quite an emphasis on academics and trying to build those academic skills in a functional way, so functional academics, and there would be some daily living skills programmed in. As the students get older, that balance shifts a little bit more to have more of the focus on the daily living skills and the skills that the students will need as adults to function in society. But also there's still programming around functional academics as part of those programs as well. Okay, this is a really good question. At what point is the need for a child to be in a specialized program greater than the need for him or her to be mainstreamed with same-aged peers? So it may not be a question of greater need or lesser need. The question, I think, is as parents to always know what are the options for your child. And that's our job, to make sure as a school board that we are letting you know when there are different options for your child. And then to have the dialogue with you about what are the pros and the cons, what are the benefits, what may be the downside to having one of those specialized placements for your child. And that we have staff, and we often do have those conversations at meetings at the school with the school team and the parent. Again, it's case by case. As I said earlier, we have many students of very similar profiles where one is being very successful in a regular class placement and the other is being very successful in a specialized class placement. A lot of it comes down to parental preference. It does come down to sometimes where your child is going to be the most comfortable. All of those things need to be looked at. The important thing to know is that just be informed. Be informed about what your options are and have the discussion of what the advantages and disadvantages might be. And also know that as a parent, it's really difficult to make these decisions, but you're not making a decision forever. You're making a decision usually for a year at a time. So if you're unsure, for example, and you're leaning towards one or the other, regular class or special class, go with your gut, try it, see how it works. If it doesn't go the way that you would have liked it to go, then just change your mind the next year. There are always options to go. If your child meets the criteria, there's always the option to be in the class or to be in a regular class. Okay, again, it's that ongoing dialogue. Another question around specialized programs, any chance that assessment classes will extend beyond kindergarten? And there was another one I think I saw about why students on the autism spectrum were not in assessment programs. So first of all, children on the autism spectrum can be in assessment program classes, and they don't extend beyond kindergarten because after kindergarten there are other options. So some of the other primary ECL, for example, many of the students in assessment program do return to regular classes, and others may go on to a different type of specialized program. Sorry, there are a lot of repeats. Here we go. My son is in a system class at a different school from our main school-based, I think it's the home school based on zoning. Can he stay at that school permanently? So the answer to that would be no. They can stay in that school as long as they're in the system class, but the expectation is that they would return to their home school or moved to another class. There is a provision called cross boundaries that principals can arrange. A principal could agree that a student who's not in their boundary be allowed to be at their school, but transportation is not provided in those cases. So students typically return to their home school after they no longer are in a specialized class. How often does the ABA expertise lead visit the school? How does she support the teachers with ABA techniques, and what does that look like? Are the teachers required to ask her for support? So just a little bit maybe more general than that. We have a whole ASD team. So we do have the ABA lead, but we have 5 teachers, one for each of the geographic teams that specialize in autism. As well, we have the speech and language pathologists, psychologists, behavior consultants, social workers that also have expertise in this area. So the ABA lead is probably not the one who's going to be working in the class directly with the teacher. There's one ABA lead and there are a lot of classes. So one thing though that I will say about that is we're very, very pleased that we do have that position. As a result of the review of the department, there was recognition that there's a great need for professional learning at all levels, for parents, for teachers, for educational assistants, for administrators, for people who work centrally at the board around many different areas of special education needs. And we have recommitted to that professional learning, and we have quite extensive professional learning opportunities that are available for employees at all levels to take advantage of. As well, they can contact, I think part of the question was how do they contact? Usually the classroom teacher doesn't make contact, but it goes through the resource teacher of the school or the principal, and they contact the ASD teacher in our department directly, and those teachers do go and work in classrooms directly with teachers. And that sort of leads into the other, what type of training in spec ed does a regular classroom get? Not really sure that question. A regular classroom teacher who doesn't have additional qualifications would not have extensive training in special education. And that's why we have special education teachers in every school to support regular class teachers. Having said that, many class teachers have gone and done additional qualifications in special education, and they do have that knowledge. But every teacher in every school has access to the team that Elizabeth described to help with them with what they need to know about special education, and specifically what it needs to look like for the students that they currently have in their class. That's all I have here. Okay, this is about assessments. Maybe Elizabeth, I'll let you answer this. I'll read it. If a child has had a private assessment done, will he be eligible to have a future one done through the school board? Oh, I'm going to give you the mic.
So having a private assessment done would not mean that a student is not eligible for an assessment by us further down the road. We do, every time there's an assessment that is requested, we look at that on an individual basis as to why an assessment is requested, why at this point in time, and is this the best time to do it. We do try to be attentive to stewardship of resources. We have a staff of 12 psychologists. It sounds like a lot, but it's not a lot when you look at the number of students we have and the number of assessments. So we need to look at how many assessments has this individual had, and can we go back and look at a previous assessment and then provide updated recommendations to the school. So maybe looking at the profile of the student, maybe the assessment was done when they were in grade 5 and they're now in grade 8 or grade 9. We can look at that information, and if the teachers are telling us that yes, this still sounds like this student, we can say, well, now at the high school level, these are the types of strategies that would be appropriate for the student. We do not have to necessarily put that child to another whole assessment. So we do look at those on an individual basis. Okay, another question. Can you please explain speech language support from the board from CCAC? Okay, I think I get that. So CCAC provides speech therapy. So speech being the actual sounds. So can I make the th sound? Can I make the s sound? So that is the speech therapy that is provided by CCAC. What our speech and language pathologists in the board look at is they look at language. So they will do a screening for the sound. So they will assess the student to see developmentally, as I'm sure you're aware, the production of sounds is developmental. So they will look at where's a child developmentally, and if it is at a level that meets CCAC's criteria, they can refer the student to CCAC for that specific speech therapy. What they do in their work and their assessments is looking at language. So language is, do you have proper syntax? Is the grammar appropriate? Do they understand receptively when instructions are given in the class? Can they understand them? Can they express what they understand? So that's what they would be looking at in their assessments, which is language. And then those are the recommendations they would be giving to a classroom teacher for that teacher to structure that intervention within the classroom setting. So hopefully that answers that question. So back to you, Colleen.
Okay, I think we have time for just a few more questions. I think it was just this one. You can check it on here. To support inclusion properly, do all schools in the Ottawa Catholic School Board have wheelchair accessible entrances, washrooms, and playground facilities? So any new school absolutely does that's been built in the last several years. All the schools are built to code and are fully accessible. If we have some of the older schools that are not, if a student registers in that school who requires that as part of the transition plan for that student arriving at the school, there is a discussion and an invitation to a meeting, one of the transition planning meetings for someone from our plant and facilities department, and the school will be made accessible for the student. Any kind of modifications that need to be made will be made before the student arrives. How are children with special needs promoted to the next level? I'm not sure if that's related to their earlier retention questions. So typically students do move along with their same aged peers, but their programming moves along at the rate that they move along. So they can be in a class with their same aged peers, but have completely individualized programming at the just right level for them. What does exceptional mean? really good question. How is it determined, and is it different than special needs? It's a little bit different because it's a word that was it's outlined in the Education Act. So when we talk about a student with special needs, any student who has an IEP is a student with special needs. Exceptional is a word that was used as part of that whole process of identifying a student. So back when that was made law, that was the way to ensure that students got the supports and services they needed. And so the committee, the IPRC committee, would determine whether or not a student was exceptional in Ontario. How do they do that? There are different categories that the ministry has determined that a student who would be exceptional would fall under. So the broad categories are intellectual, physical, communication, behavior. And then there are subcategories to those, and some students are deemed to be in multiple categories. So it really, the term really only applies in regards to the IPRC process, and you can find those definitions they're in the special education report, I believe, and certainly you can find them on the ministry website. When you read them, they're very general in nature. So your student falls into one of those categories, but when you read the definition, everything in the definition doesn't apply to every student. So it is somewhat confusing. How is it determined, I like this question, how is it determined that a spec ed program is working? If a parent wanted data on this, how would it be accessed? What happens to the child if the program fails them? That's a really great question because the IEP is dynamic and it needs to change. And the school teams are going to come up with the best educational plan they can for a student based on the current information they have. But sometimes we may overshoot or we may underestimate. And I know I, as a classroom teacher, have tried really hard to get the just right expectations for a student on an IEP, thinking that this is an expectation that's going to last from September to January, and the next week the student's showing me they can do it. So, and the other can happen as well. We can overshoot. We can choose something that's too complicated and not reachable, and a month in we realize this is not going to happen, this was too much for this student. Okay, that's not on the student, that's on the staff. And so we have to be able to go back and recognize that and readjust and adjust the expectations to make sure that they are reasonable. How is it determined if they're working? Well, if the student is progressing towards achievement of the expectation, or if they have achieved the expectation, then it's working. If they haven't, then it's not working, and we need to go back and we need to tweak the plan. What happens to the child if the program fails them? We go back and we create another program. We'll continue to work till we get the right program for every child. I hope that answered that question. I think that's it. Yeah. Oh.
Okay, well that covers about all the general type of questions that we received this evening. So I invite you to stay around for another half hour or so. You're invited to chat with SEAC members and with our presenters this evening if you have any questions of more of a sort of a personal nature. And thanks again so much for coming out this evening. It's been wonderful. Thanks. Good night.